First Contact and Ultimatum. The massive crystalline ships of the Meridian Collective darkened the skies above every major city on Earth. Their arrival hadn't been gentle or diplomatic. No warning, no attempt at peaceful first contact. Instead, humanity woke one morning to find their planet surrounded by vessels that made their most advanced spacecraft look like children's toys. Dr. Sarah Chen stood at her laboratory window in the Quantum Physics Research Center, watching the nearest ship hover over Shanghai. Its surface rippled with patterns of light that seemed to defy the laws of physics. As Earth's leading quantum physicist, she should have been fascinated by the technological marvel. Instead, she felt only dread. Dr. Chen, her assistant, Marcus Wong, appeared at her door. The UN Security Council is requesting your presence. They're assembling an emergency response team. The journey to New York took less than an hour in the hypersonic transport, but it felt like an eternity. Sarah spent the time reviewing the preliminary scans of the alien vessels, searching for any weakness, any hint of their true capabilities. The data only confirmed her fears. The collective's technology was centuries beyond Earth's current level. In the UN chamber, Sarah found herself seated beside General Diana Hayes, Earth's most decorated military strategist. The chamber was packed with world leaders, scientists, and military personnel, all watching as the first transmission from the Meridian Collective began to play. The alien that appeared on the massive screen was humanoid but clearly artificial, a synthetic avatar with flowing silver skin and eyes that shifted like liquid mercury. "We are the Meridian Collective," it announced in perfect English. "Your civilization has attracted our attention due to your unique approach to technological development." Sarah noticed something in the avatar's tone, not contempt exactly, but something close to it. The alien continued, "Your species has demonstrated an unfortunate tendency toward unrestricted innovation. This cannot be permitted to continue." General Hayes leaned closer to Sarah, whispering, "They're afraid of us. But why?" The avatar's next words answered that question. "Your quantum research, particularly in the areas of consciousness transfer and reality manipulation, has been deemed too dangerous to continue. You will cease all advanced technological development immediately and submit to our oversight. This is not a negotiation." The chamber erupted in protests, but Sarah remained silent, her mind racing. She had been on the verge of a breakthrough in her research, a way to manipulate quantum fields that could revolutionize everything from computing to space travel. Was that what had drawn their attention? "You have 48 Earth hours to comply," the avatar continued. "After that, we will be forced to take more direct action. Your military capabilities cannot hope to resist us. Choose wisely." The transmission ended, leaving the chamber in chaos. World leaders argued about submission versus resistance. Military commanders debated hopeless defensive strategies, and scientists protested the loss of their life's work. Sarah felt a tap on her shoulder. It was Dr. James Martinez, her former mentor, and the current head of the Global Science Council. "Come with me," he whispered. "There's something you need to see." He led her to a secure room deep beneath the UN building. Inside, she found a small group of the world's top scientists and military leaders gathered around a holographic display. The image showed a detailed analysis of the collected ships. "We've been preparing for this possibility," Martinez explained. "Not aliens specifically, but the threat of advanced hostile forces. Project Oracle has been running in secret for the past decade." Sarah studied the data scrolling across the display. "These energy signatures, they're similar to my quantum field research." "Exactly," General Hayes said, joining them. "We believe the collective uses a highly advanced but fundamentally similar technology. They're not here to protect the galaxy from our dangerous innovation. They're here to eliminate potential competition." "But their technology is far beyond ours," Sarah argued. "We couldn't possibly." "That's where you're wrong," Martinez interrupted. "Their technology is more advanced, yes, but it's also stagnant. They haven't made any significant improvements in centuries. They've reached a plateau. and they're terrified of younger races surpassing them. Sarah's mind was already racing with possibilities. Her recent breakthrough, the one she hadn't even published yet, suggested that quantum fields could be manipulated in ways the collective might never have considered. Their technology might be more advanced, but it was built on old principles. "How long have we really got?" she asked. "The 48-hour ultimatum is a bluff," General Hayes replied. "Our deep space sensors detected their reinforcement fleet. They'll arrive in 10 days. That's our real deadline." Sarah turned to Martinez. "Show me everything you have on Project Oracle, and get me access to a quantum computer. I have an idea that might just save Earth, or at least buy us enough time to find a way to fight back." As she followed Martinez deeper into the facility, Sarah couldn't help but smile grimly. The collective had made a crucial mistake. They had threatened a species that had spent its entire history overcoming seemingly impossible odds. If they thought humanity would simply submit to their demands, they were about to learn a harsh lesson about human determination. The race against time had begun, and the fate of human innovation hung in the balance. But for the first time since the ships appeared, Sarah felt a glimmer of hope. The collective might have centuries of advanced technology on their side, but humanity had something far more powerful: the ability to think outside the box and the desperate creativity that came from fighting for survival. They had no idea what they'd just unleashed. Project Prometheus. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, in a facility that officially didn't exist, Dr. Sarah Chen stared at the holographic simulation floating before her. The quantum patterns twisted and folded in ways that should have been impossible, defying conventional physics. Behind her, General Hayes and Dr. Martinez watched in silence as she manipulated the energy fields. "The collective's technology is based on quantum manipulation," Sarah explained, zooming in on a particular pattern. "But they're using brute force methods. Tremendous energy to achieve relatively simple effects. It's like using a sledgehammer to drive a nail." "And you think you found a better way?" Hayes asked, her eyes tracking the complex movements of energy in the display. Sarah nodded, pulling up another simulation. They'd been using the same techniques for centuries. But quantum mechanics doesn't care about tradition. There are shortcuts they've never even considered. The facility, codenamed Prometheus Base, had been transformed into humanity's last hope. While the world above maintained a pretense of compliance with the collective's demands, teams of scientists worked tirelessly below ground. They had 7 days left before the reinforcement fleet arrived. Marcus Wong burst into the lab, tablet in hand. "Dr. Chen, the quantum AI just finished analyzing the collective's shield frequencies. You need to see this." Sarah grabbed the tablet, her eyes widening as she scrolled through the data. They're not actually creating quantum barriers. They're shifting their ships slightly out of phase with normal spacetime. "Is that good news or bad news?" Hayes asked. A smile spread across Sarah's face, the kind of smile that had preceded some of humanity's greatest breakthroughs. "It's perfect. Because they're using so much energy to maintain those phase shifts, they've never considered that there might be a more elegant solution." The next few days passed in a blur of calculations, simulations, and carefully controlled tests. Sarah's team worked in shifts, pushing the boundaries of quantum physics in ways that would have seemed impossible just weeks ago. The presence of the collected ships overhead served as a constant reminder of what was at stake. On the 4th day, they achieved their first major breakthrough. Sarah stood in the testing chamber, surrounded by monitoring equipment, as Marcus initiated the quantum fold sequence. A small metal sphere sat on a pedestal in the center of the room. "Field generators at full power," Marcus reported. "Quantum alignment stable. Initiating fold in 3, 2, 1. The sphere didn't disappear in a flash of light or fade away dramatically. One moment it was there, and the next it simply wasn't. But according to their instruments, it still existed, just slightly outside normal spacetime. "Phase shift successful," Sarah announced, trying to keep her voice steady despite her excitement. Power consumption is less than 1% of what the collective uses for the same effect. General Hayes stepped forward, studying the empty pedestal. Can you bring it back? Sarah nodded to Marcus, who reversed the sequence. The sphere reappeared exactly where it had been. Hayes reached out to touch it. It was cool to the touch, showing no signs of the incredible journey it had just taken. How soon can we scale this up? Hayes asked. That's the beautiful part, Sarah replied. The energy requirements don't increase linearly with size. We could theoretically phase shift an entire ship using less power than the collective uses for a single personal shield. The implications were staggering. Not only had they replicated one of the collective's most advanced defensive technologies, but they'd also found a way to improve it dramatically. But Sarah wasn't satisfied with just matching their oppressors' capabilities. Show them the offensive applications, Martine suggested. Sarah pulled up another simulation. The same principle that lets us phase shift our own matter could be used to create quantum disruptions in their shields. Their brute force approach leaves them vulnerable to more precise attacks. The simulation showed a small quantum pulse slipping through a collective-style shield as if it wasn't there. The applications for both defense and offense were clear. Humanity had found a way to turn the collective's own technological principles against them. But their work wasn't finished. As the team celebrated their breakthrough, Sarah was already focused on the next challenge. We need to integrate this with our AI systems, she said. The collective relies on pre-programmed responses. We need our systems to be able to adapt in real time. The remaining days were spent testing, refining, and preparing for mass production. Small quantum fold generators were installed in prototype defense satellites, while larger versions were fitted to Earth's few space-capable warships. Everything had to be done in secret, hidden from the collective's watching eyes. On the evening before the reinforcement fleet was due to arrive, Sarah stood in the observation dome of Prometheus Base, looking up at the stars hidden behind the mountain above. Marcus joined her, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Do you think we're ready?" he asked, handing her one of the cups. Sarah took a sip before answering. "Ready or not, tomorrow we find out if humanity deserves its reputation for beating impossible odds." In orbit, the collected ships maintained their silent vigil, unaware that their ultimatum had sparked not submission, but innovation. They had come to prevent humanity from advancing too quickly, but their presence had only accelerated human development beyond anything they could have imagined. As Sarah returned to her lab for one final check of the systems, she couldn't help but appreciate the irony. The collective's attempt to restrict human innovation had instead created exactly the kind of technological leap they had feared. Tomorrow, they would learn that trying to contain human ingenuity was like trying to hold back the tide with your hands, not just futile, but ultimately counterproductive. The stage was set for a confrontation that would change the course of human history. Project Prometheus was ready to bring fire to the gods. Breaking the chains. The collective's reinforcement fleet arrived precisely on schedule, emerging from hyperspace in a dazzling display of light and energy. 30 ships, each larger than the ones already orbiting Earth, took up position around the planet. Their arrival was meant to be the final show of force that would crush any thought of resistance. In the command center of Prometheus Base, Dr. Sarah Chen watched the tactical display with practiced calm. Around her, military personnel and scientists monitored streams of data from their hidden sensors. The collective ships arranged themselves in perfect geometric patterns, beautiful, precise, and utterly predictable. Their formation is exactly what the AI predicted, Marcus reported, his fingers dancing across his console. They're following standard intimidation protocols from their military database. General Hayes stood at the central command station, her face illuminated by the holographic displays. Status of our defense grid. Quantum fold generators are online and synchronized, Sarah replied. All ships and satellites are in position, running silent in phase shift. The collective sensors show exactly what they expect to see, a helpless planet preparing to submit. The general nodded to her communications officer. Send the response to their ultimatum. On every collective ship, the same message appeared: humanity respectfully declines to comply with your restrictions. We choose to forge our own path. The reaction was immediate. The collective ships began powering up their weapons, their energy signatures flaring on the tactical displays. Their avatar appeared on the global communication channels, its silver features arranged in an expression of contempt. "Your defiance is pointless," it announced. "You have no technology capable of resisting us. This is your final warning before we begin orbital enforcement procedures." Hayes smiled grimly. "Show them how wrong they are. Execute Operation Prometheus." Sarah initiated the sequence they had practiced countless times. Across Earth's orbit, dozens of previously invisible defense platforms shifted back into normal spacetime, their quantum fold generators creating microscopic distortions in reality itself. Each platform carried a single weapon, not the brute force energy weapons the collective expected, but precise quantum disruptors designed to exploit the weaknesses in their technology. The collective ships didn't react immediately. Their sensors, designed to detect conventional energy weapons and shields, struggled to process what they were seeing. By the time they began to respond, it was too late. The first wave of quantum pulses slipped through their supposedly impenetrable shields as if they weren't there. The pulses didn't damage the ships directly. Instead, they created cascading failures in their power distribution systems. One by one, the mighty vessels of the collective began losing power, their perfect formation breaking apart as emergency systems kicked in. "Multiple direct hits," Marcus called out. "Their shields are trying to adapt, but our AI is modifying the quantum signatures faster than their automated systems can respond." On the tactical display, chaos erupted among the collective fleet. Ships tried to rotate to bring undamaged shields to bear, but their rigid combat protocols worked against them. They had no doctrine for dealing with weapons that ignored their defenses entirely. "They're launching fighters," someone reported. "Hundreds of them." Sarah had been waiting for this. Activate the phase net. The space around Earth shimmered as thousands of tiny quantum fold generators activated simultaneously, creating a web of intersecting phase shifts. The collective fighters flew straight into it, their own phase shift technology interacting catastrophically with the human-made field. Fighters began disappearing from radar, shifted into microscopic pocket dimensions from which their pilots would need to be rescued later. The AI reports their ships are attempting to modify their quantum resonance patterns, Marcus said. "They're trying to copy our technology in real time." Sarah allowed herself a small smile. "Let them try. They're working from first principles we abandoned days ago." The battle, if it could even be called that, lasted less than 30 minutes. When it was over, half the collective's reinforcement fleet hung powerless in orbit, their crews evacuating to the still-functioning ships. The others had retreated to a safe distance, their sensors frantically trying to analyze what had just happened. The avatar appeared again, but this time its perfect features showed something new. Fear. "This is impossible. Your civilization does not have the technological base to achieve quantum manipulation at this level." "You made two mistakes," Sarah replied, stepping forward to address the avatar directly. "First, you assumed that your way was the only way to manipulate quantum fields. Second, you thought that threatening humanity would lead to submission rather than innovation. You cannot be allowed to retain this technology," the avatar declared. "The stability of the galaxy depends on controlled technological development." Hayes joined Sarah at the communication station. "Your stability is stagnation. Humanity will not be confined by your limitations. We choose progress, no matter the risks." The remaining collective ships began pulling back, their retreat just as orderly as their arrival had been. But before the avatar disappeared, it issued one final warning. "This is not over. The collective will not allow such dangerous technology to spread." In the aftermath, as recovery teams began the process of rescuing stranded collective pilots, Sarah found herself back in the observation dome. The disabled alien ships were visible to the naked eye now, their once gleaming hulls dark against the stars. "They'll be back," won't they?" Marcus asked, joining her at the window. "Of course," Sarah replied. "But next time, we'll be even more prepared. The quantum AI is already analyzing the battle data, finding ways to improve our systems. That's something the collective has forgotten how to do. Learn from their mistakes." Down in the labs, teams of scientists were already working on new applications of the quantum fold technology. The collective's attack had meant to end human innovation. Instead, it had catapulted humanity centuries ahead in just a few days. As she watched the stars, Sarah realized that this was just the beginning. Humanity had broken free of their chains before they were even fully applied. The galaxy was about to discover that trying to restrict human advancement was like trying to stop time itself, impossible and ultimately futile. The age of stagnation was over. The age of innovation had begun. Revolution of warfare. News of humanity's victory spread through the galaxy like a shockwave. The collective, which had maintained technological superiority for over 2,000 years, had been defeated by a species that had only achieved spaceflight a century ago. In the aftermath, encrypted transmissions began flooding into Earth's newly established Galactic Communications Center. Dr. Sarah Chen sat in her new office at the United Earth Defense Command, reviewing the latest diplomatic communique. This one was from the Orcs Confederation, a species that had been under collective technology restrictions for the past 3 centuries. Another request for alliance, General Hayes asked from the doorway. Sarah nodded, gesturing to the holographic display showing dozens of similar messages. 17 species so far. All of them want access to our quantum fold technology. The collective's grip on the galaxy is weaker than we thought. The past month had revealed a startling truth. Earth wasn't the first world to face the collective's restrictions. Throughout the galaxy, dozens of civilizations had been forced to limit their technological development, all in the name of stability and safety. Marcus rushed into the office, his expression urgent. Long-range sensors just picked up something big. The collective is mobilizing their entire central fleet, over 300 ships. Hayes moved to the tactical display, studying the data. They're desperate. They know if they don't stop us now, their control over the galaxy is finished. They're not just coming for us, Sarah realized, analyzing the fleet movements. They're positioning forces near every species that's contacted us. They're trying to maintain their information quarantine. But the collective had already made their fatal mistake. In the month since the first battle, humanity hadn't stood still. The quantum AI had evolved exponentially, developing new applications for the full technology that even Sarah hadn't considered. In a secure testing facility beneath the Pacific Ocean, the latest breakthrough was taking shape. Sarah led Hayes and a group of alien representatives, the first ever allowed on Earth, through a series of security checkpoints. Traditional space warfare relies on known physics, Sarah explained as they walked. Energy weapons, kinetic impacts, predictable cause and effect. The collective mastered these principles centuries ago, but they stopped looking for alternatives. They entered a massive chamber where a prototype ship hung suspended in a quantum field. Unlike the sleek designs of the collective, this vessel was angular and asymmetric, its hull covered in fractal patterns that seemed to hurt the eyes. "We call it the Mobius," Sarah said. "It doesn't just use quantum fields for defense or propulsion. The entire ship exists in a state of quantum uncertainty. It can be in multiple places simultaneously, operate on different dimensional planes, or split into smaller vessels that share a quantum-entangled consciousness." The alien representatives muttered among themselves, their translator devices struggling to keep up with their excited discussions. One of them, a tall crystalline being from the Orcs Confederation, stepped forward. "This technology, it breaks every rule of warfare the collective has enforced for millennia," it said. "They will respond with everything they have." Hayes smiled grimly. "We're counting on it, because while they're gathering their conventional forces, we're changing the nature of space combat itself." The next few weeks saw frantic activity across Earth and its new allies. While the collective's massive fleet approached in perfect formation, quantum-fold technology spread throughout the galaxy. But it wasn't just the technology that spread. It was humanity's approach to innovation itself. Species that had been forced into technological stagnation for centuries began experimenting again, combining quantum principles with their own unique scientific traditions. The Orcs integrated it with their crystalline computing. The methane-breathing Vrol adapted it for their unusual biology. When the collective's central fleet finally arrived, they found not just Earth waiting for them, but a coalition of species armed with technology that violated every principle of their ordered universe. The battle that followed would be remembered for generations as the day space warfare changed forever. Mobius-class ships phased in and out of reality, striking from dimensional angles the collective's sensors couldn't even detect. Orcs vessels projected crystalline quantum matrices that turned the enemy's own phase shields against them. Vrol ships executed maneuvers that seemed to ignore the laws of physics entirely. From her command post in the Prometheus station, now in high Earth orbit, Sarah watched the tactical displays with a mixture of awe and satisfaction. The collective's mighty fleet, for all its size and power, was fighting with antiquated concepts against an enemy that reimagined warfare with every passing moment. Their formation is breaking, Marcus reported. The AI says they're trying to adapt, but they can't update their battle protocols fast enough. Their command structure is too rigid. That's their real weakness, Sarah realized. Not their technology, but their inability to embrace change. They've been the strongest for so long, they'd forgotten how to evolve. The battle lasted 3 days. By the end, the collective's central fleet wasn't destroyed. That hadn't been the goal. Instead, it had been systematically dismantled, its ships disabled by weapons they couldn't understand, its crews rescued by the very species they had tried to suppress. But the real victory wasn't military. As Sarah watched the defeated collective ships retreat, she knew they had won something far more important. They had broken the chains of enforced stagnation that had held the galaxy in check for thousands of years. In her lab, the quantum AI was already proposing new innovations, combining ideas from a dozen alien sciences with human creativity. The age of restriction was over. The age of unlimited progress had begun, and not even the collective could stop it now. The galaxy was about to learn what humanity had known all along. True stability doesn't come from restriction, but from the freedom to innovate, to fail, and to try again. The revolution wasn't just in warfare. It was in thought itself. New Dawn. 6 months after the defeat of the collective's central fleet, the galaxy was unrecognizable. The rigid hierarchy that had maintained order for millennia had shattered, replaced by a rapidly evolving network of alliances and innovations. At the center of this transformation sat Earth, no longer a primitive backwater, but the heart of a technological revolution. Dr. Sarah Chen stood before the newly formed Galactic Innovation Council, a stark contrast to the old collective's chambers of cold precision. Representatives from 30 species filled the room, their forms as varied as their approaches to science. The Orcs' crystalline bodies refracted light in complex patterns, while the gaseous Vrol swirled in their containment fields. The collective has called for a final parley, she announced. Their remaining leadership wants to meet on neutral ground to discuss terms. Terms. The Orcs representatives' crystals chimed with amusement. They still think they can negotiate restrictions on our development. No, General Hayes said, joining Sarah at the podium. According to our intelligence, they're facing internal collapse. Younger members of their society are demanding change, inspired by what they've seen us achieve. The quantum AI's latest projections filled the air above them, showing the spread of new technologies throughout known space. It was more than just the quantum fold drives now. Every species had taken the basic principles and evolved them in unique directions. The Vrol had developed quantum communication that worked through dimensional phases. The Orcs had created crystalline computers that existed in superposition, solving complex problems by calculating all possibilities simultaneously. Their fundamental mistake, Sarah explained, wasn't trying to restrict us. It was believing that progress could be controlled, that innovation could be locked in a box and regulated. They forgot that the most powerful force in the universe isn't technology. It's the drive to discover, to create, to evolve. The meeting with the collective was set for the following week at a neutral station in deep space. As their ship approached, Sarah watched the massive structure through the Mobius's quantum-shifted viewport. The station was an ancient artifact of some long-dead civilization, its purpose long forgotten by even the collective. Inside, the chamber was vast and silent. The collective's representatives, no longer digital avatars but their true forms, waited at one end. Sarah was surprised to see how organic they looked, almost humanoid except for their iridescent skin and multiple pairs of eyes. They seemed smaller somehow, less imposing than their holographic projections had suggested. "We have reviewed your proposal," the collective's lead speaker said, their voice carrying complex harmonics. "You suggest replacing our system of technological control with chaos." "Not chaos," Sarah corrected. "Evolution. Natural growth. Each species developing according to their own path, sharing discoveries but not forcing them on others." "And what prevents one species from developing weapons that could destroy all others? What stops the strong from dominating the weak? Our system maintained peace for thousands of years." General Hayes stepped forward. "It also stifled progress, locked entire civilizations into artificial limitations, and created the very instability you feared. Look what happened when you tried to restrict humanity. We developed more in a few months than you had in centuries, precisely because we had to. More importantly," Sarah added, "we learned something your civilization forgot long ago. The greatest innovations come from cooperation, from combining different perspectives and approaches." She gestured, and the quantum AI projected its latest analysis. "Every species thinks differently, sees problems from unique angles. The Vrol understand fluid dynamics in ways we never could. The Orcs' crystalline computing opens possibilities we hadn't imagined. Even your own civilization's achievements, when freed from rigid doctrine, could help us all reach new heights." The collective representatives conferred among themselves, their skin rippling with changing colors. Finally, the lead speaker turned back to them. "Our younger generations are persuasive in their arguments for change. Perhaps it is time for the collective to evolve as well." The agreement they reached that day would be known as the Dawn Accords. The collective would surrender its role as galactic regulators, transforming instead into one of many research partners in a new age of unlimited innovation. Their centuries of accumulated knowledge would be shared freely, no longer held as a means of control, but offered as a foundation for future discoveries. Back on Earth, Sarah stood in her old lab at Prometheus Base, now part of a sprawling research complex where scientists from dozens of species worked together. Marcus was showing a group of young collective researchers the principles of quantum fold technology, while they in turn shared insights from their own scientific traditions. "Did you ever imagine it would end like this?" General Hayes asked, joining her at the window. Sarah watched a Vrol scientist, demonstrating a new form of quantum communication to a mixed group of human and alien researchers. "And this isn't an ending. It's a beginning. We've barely scratched the surface of what's possible." Beyond the window, ships of various species moved through the quantum highways that now connected the galaxy. Each vessel was unique, incorporating technologies and principles that would have been forbidden just months ago. The rigid, unchanging order of the collective had been replaced by something far more powerful: the chaos of creativity, the uncertainty of innovation, and the strength of diversity. "They tried to prevent us from advancing too quickly," Sarah mused, "but in doing so, they catalyzed the greatest leap forward in galactic history. Sometimes the best way to predict the future is to invent it yourself." The quantum AI chimed softly, presenting its latest analysis of combined human-alien research projects. The possibilities it showed were beyond anything Sarah had imagined when they'd first developed the quantum fold technology. This was humanity's gift to the galaxy, not just new technology, but a new way of thinking, a reminder that the greatest discoveries come not from control and restriction, but from the freedom to imagine, to experiment, and to dream. The age of limits was over. The future was unlimited, and it belonged to those brave enough to reach for it.